Google releases their first beta of the next version of Android, simply called Android Q for now. Let's take a look at what's new in it. Before we go into the details, a few things to keep in mind. This is a very early build of the system, so many things can change between now and the final build. There will be a lot more new features in the final build for sure, and some of the changes that you see in this beta build may not even make it to the final system. Also, the beta build is aimed mostly at developers who want to make sure that their apps work well with Android Q. So system behavior changes and API changes are given more importance than user-facing behavior. And since this is a beta build, it won't be as stable as regular production builds, so I wouldn't recommend using this beta as in your daily driver system. But with all that out of the way, let's take a look at what's new in the next version of Android. The overall focus of Android Q so far seems to be about improving privacy and giving more control to users on this front. We can see some user-facing changes as well as API changes that reduces the chances of apps misusing our personal data. Let's go over the UI changes first. I flashed Android Q system images onto a Pixel 3 and I'm comparing it with a Pixel 2 XL running the latest stable version of Android Pie. On the surface, the interface looks very similar to Android Pie, though there are some immediately visible changes. Google's new font, called Product Sans, which we have been seeing in many Google apps over the past few months, are present in most parts of the system UI now, like the Settings app. Going into the Settings app, the initial thing that I noticed is that some options in the display section are missing, like device theme. There were reports of a better dark mode in initial leaks of Android Q, but there is no option here to activate it. However, you can activate it in a couple of ways and I'll be getting to that soon. Moving on, we have three sections in place of the previous security and location section, and they are titled Privacy, Location and Security. All are separate. Privacy gives us direct links into the permissions granted and denied to each app, and the new clustering of apps makes more sense than the current ungrouped list. The location settings have also been updated to reflect the final grained location controls in Android Q. So far, location permission for apps was either on or off always, but with Q, you can finally grant apps access to location only when the app is in the foreground, similar to iOS. We can see that when an app requests permission to use location, we have three options instead of just allow or deny, reflecting these new changes. Default apps now have a roles section, which is a new feature in Android Q that grants apps elevated access to system functions based on well-understood use cases, like the default browser or the default messaging apps. But as of now, this seems redundant because of the default apps section, but this will probably be cleaned up for upcoming releases. The built-in file manager also seems to be redesigned in line with material design refresh. It also has new features to filter by document type, which has been long available in third-party file managers, but is a welcome addition in the stock file manager. I am liking the cleaner look and the new features so far. Now, let's see how to activate dark mode in Android Q. There are two ways to do this, and the first one, interestingly, is to turn on battery saver. But this may have some other side effects, so let's move on to the other option, which is using this ADB command. I'll also leave more information about this command and how to use it in the description below. Dark mode in battery saver makes sense, since more black can lead to power savings in OLED displays. But I wonder why Google chose not to make this option available outside of the battery saver mode. Anyway, the dark mode is much more pervasive than before, extending to the Settings app, Notification Shade, the notifications themselves, and many supported apps. There are also a few theming options buried in developer options like accent color and default icon shape. Again, there is no guarantee that any of these theming features will make it to the final Android Q build, but I hope at least some of them do. There are a few more minor UI changes like swipe left on notification no longer clears them, but shows the snooze and settings option. Other changes include emergency info in the power menu and a fancier app open animation. One of my main complaints, the slow share menu in Android Pie, also seems to be getting faster with improvements in the underlying API. Speaking of the underlying APIs, let's take a look at more under the hood changes. I won't go into too much detail, but again, the main emphasis seems to be on privacy. There are new policies on apps related to location access, file system access, clipboard access, launching activities from the background, a new permission for accessing activity recognition services and data, and more. There are also a slew of improvements like a native MIDI API, Wi-Fi MAC address randomization, Vulkan API improvements, and more. I'll link to the Android developer site, which gives you a comprehensive list of all changes in Android Q. So, how is Android Q looking so far? Though it doesn't look a lot different from the outside from Android Pie, there are a lot of under-the-hood improvements that I'm really excited about. The privacy-focused changes are very welcome, and there are countless small improvements that lead to a more cohesive and enjoyable experience. Not to mention that this is just the first beta of Android Q, and we will be seeing a lot more changes in the further betas. And the next one should be coming out around Google I/O, which is in May. Also, this is a beta build, so I'd really not recommend you using it in your daily driver system, and I'd wait for at least a second beta for that. And that's it for today's video. Hope you guys found it helpful and interesting. Hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more content. I'll see you soon in the next one, and thanks for watching.